What's going on? What's going on? Can you hear me okay, Janice? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Awesome. Awesome. Welcome, everyone.
Awesome.
Looks like, I guess the one good thing about starting the broadcast and having that timer is that it starts to alerting people to come in. So there's,
Hey.
normally I start the broadcast and have to wait for people to trickle in. But that is one of the benefits. But obviously, one of the downsides, I can't really talk to you. So I'm just, doing the private chat. So,
This is
we,
awesome.
yeah, no, this is great, and I'm happy to have you. Obviously, it's been a while since I first reached out to you. I think maybe in December or maybe even November. I'm not
Mhm.
sure. So definitely looking forward to this conversation. Let me see who we have up in here already. We have ZJ Iceman. Let's go. I'm not gonna be able to get to everybody, but if you type in the comments, I'll be able to see no matter what platform you're on, whether it's Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, we'll be able to see. And then we'll take questions. If you're new to these sessions, we'll take questions just from the comment section. I can't promise that we'll get to all the questions depending on how many there are, but we definitely have questions at the end of the session, so we'll get to as many of those as we can. So I see Franklin Stewart on Facebook. What's going on? One-Handed
Hey.
Bandit on Twitch. Low Wave Productions 50/50. I see you. Rock 5. What's going on? Might Write for You. Yes, let's go ahead and jump right into it since we have our guest here. She was early, so we don't have to wait for our guests to appear. Sometimes our guests are running late, so thank you for being on time. We appreciate it. We're going to be respectful of your
Lord.
time and not go over an hour, um if that. But welcome to the MEC live session.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Well, I wanted to be early because you just never know with technology, right? It's like, but today was seamless. So thank you for that.
Exactly. So today we have Janice Taylor, the founder and CEO, correctly, of
Mhm.
EQ. So
Yes,
we're
that
gonna
is it.
we're gonna jump into yet another NFT conversation. We've been having these conversations since early last year, and I think we need to continue to have them as the space continues to evolve. New information is shared, new artists employ new strategies, different tools and resources are always coming about. So we want to talk about it and stay ahead of the game so that the folks listening to this can set themselves up for success. So again, thank you for being here. Do you
My
want to
pleasure.
give a background about yourself before we jump into, all?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Yeah, so I can totally do that. And then I'd love to know like where you guys kind of came in your evolution of learning since we started to talk about this NFT space so we can make sure that the listeners are getting, maximum benefit from whatever knowledge I can impart if there is any. Let's hope there's some. So
I mean, I think people are at different stages,
yeah,
and my thoughts are continuing to evolve. I'm going to play devil's advocate at times, and then be in support at times. So, I think we're all over the place, and the people watching probably have, different levels of experiences with NFTs so far. So,
yeah, that makes sense. And I've seen some of your posts and stuff, so I can see where you're like, really even yourself sort of evolving and also coming up with some conclusions, which I think are awesome. So I'll just give a tiny bit of my background because then I'd really just love to dive in and make sure we get lots of questions from humans. So this is my third startup. I think being in the startup game, my first startup was actually in professional sports across the 5 major sports leagues. I'd been there in the children's digital animation side actually. So we had pioneered, I think, some of the early technology, almost like before there was a metaverse. We were looking at like how can we create this alternate universe for kids to interact with their favorite sports teams, but still be safe. Because if you're 7, 8 years old, I'm not sure Instagram is the best place for you. So how can we have you really engage with these teams? It was a really wild experience. It was my first startup. I'm Canadian, so of course we launched in hockey because you're like kicked out of the country if you don't start in hockey. And through that had like formed a lot of really great relationships in the music and entertainment industry because there's lots of overlap and intertwining, I think, with pro sports and music and the entertainment industry. I actually went into mental health in my second startup, was really looking at how people heal. I grew up, in a pretty rough neighborhood on the streets, and I was very in tuned with what it was like to be a kid at risk. And even though we're quote unquote Canadian, we still have our own social issues. And then as I grew older and I did my degree, I was always really fascinated by the connection between our finances and our emotional scarcity roots. Like, do we ever really escape that feeling of always just trying to get ahead and trying to survive and trying to escape, and that wheel that we've all been on if you've ever been in the hustle and had to really, even find your next meal. And I know that feeling in a visceral way. And so I wanted to understand it on every level. From there, I ended up on the venture side at a venture studio looking at women and BIPOC founders and how we could get them funded earlier. As you know, in the tech industry, like only 1.1% of women and diverse founders are funded today. That's the 2021 number. So if you think of all the venture capital funding, it's not going to women and it's not going, to people of color. And I think that that's a consistent across industries where we've seen this entire system financially not be built for women and particularly people of color. It's rigged from the beginning, really, to have all of these inherent biases and barriers to entry. And through that was kind of starting to look at the Web3 space and saying, well, what's happening over here? And then a really great founder who actually was part of a founding team at Cello, which was a blockchain, encouraged me to take a look at the space. And through there was okay, I really know now what I'm going to build. And the more that I started to see what was happening in the Web3 space, I felt like my life's journey from being that 8-year-old kid trying to figure out how to eat to here was really sort of all came together. And so I decided to make another startup. So that's the journey to where I am.
Awesome. So give people some insight into what EQ is, what you guys are doing. Maybe not into the specific of how it works just yet, and why what you guys are doing may be different, but maybe just a brief intro.
I think the ethos is really important with a lot of these platforms, particularly for artists. But I think once I really started to dive into the music and entertainment space, what seemed to be a common denominator, like what ate at people's soul, was the fact that they had given up their rights. On some level, they weren't being paid equitably, they weren't being paid fairly. And those that chose to stay out of it, it was such a grind. And the more I looked at the industry, I noticed that they really just use the capital weapon. I'll give you this cash advance. You go create, but you sign that deal and you sign so much away. And it ate at people. The more I met with artists, the more I met with producers, songwriters, it was just so raw and real that I thought, at EQ, we need to neutralize capital. We need to offer different types of capital that can allow the artist to make different choices. Choose us, don't choose us, but don't ever feel like your back is against the wall and you've got to take this deal, or you need to feed, and so you're going to make compromises. I wanted to neutralize capital. So at EQ, we look at everything that's happening in the Web3 space, but we also look at what's been going on in Web2 and say, artists are really startups. Fundamentally, they operate on very similar time continuums. They have similar data. They're really startups. So could we, by doing that, really build different types of capital opportunities depending on where you are in your career? It's not flat capital. And what I noticed in the music industry particularly is that the capital is flat. So the day you enter, you sign away rights. That, there's not even another option other than to be independent in other types of that. So we really wanted to neutralize capital. So EQ for us is like a capital marketplace. We say, here you are, this is what you want to do. Okay, what's the right tool and financial tool that works for you?
Right. So I mean, this speaks that you kind of answered the question already, but are there other reasons why you're so excited about the space? Because I see a lot of people addressing the capital situation. Don't get me wrong. I mean, artists need funding, but through my experience, I previously built an independent record label pretty much from the ground up. And I've had so many interactions with artists. Like, capital is not their biggest issue. They might think it is, but it's not their biggest issue, and it's not the only issue that, in theory, a good working relationship with a label provides.
Right.
So that's why I'm a little bit skeptical, because people keep pounding home the we'll get you funding. A lot of artists are going to figure out funding was never their biggest issue. Like once they get funding.
Well, and that's, I think, very similar to startups, right? We've seen how many startups fail with tens of millions of dollars. And so, like, again, going back to the premise that artists are startups, capital is a fundamental first one, because you need to take off the table this sense of desperation and scarcity. The second part of it that I noticed is a massive issue is access. Like how to navigate this and work with the right producers and songwriters, and how do you start to really build what I would say is a career. And I think that there's a lot of instant gratification in the space, right? There's lots of like, oh, if I just get on this playlist, well, that's not necessarily a true case. You build building blocks. And with that comes a couple of things. One is obviously capital. The second, it's like the 3 C's: community. And the third is collaboration. So we call this the 3 C's of Web3. And in order to be an effective platform, I believe you need to touch on 3 of the C's. And so collaborations and community are a really key component of that. So through the back end of the artist dashboard is really allowing us to do that. In the startup land, sometimes, a really great incubator and accelerator can propel your career forward. Having the right connector, the right advisor, and then the right strategies that work for your startup are really critical too. And I think that you're right, it's not just capital. I think capital neutralizes. That's why I said it's the first neutralizing agent. Then afterwards, it's really seeing like, well, what stage is this artist at? And what do they really need to get from this place to this place? And can we pull in the tools that allow that to happen and to allow growth? The other part of it for me is like when you go to buy a first house or get your first credit card or anything, you have like a co-signer, or you have someone that like bets for you that says, okay, I'll vouch, this person can do this. I think that's the other part of, when we talk about smart capital too, is making sure that there's other opportunities for, again, the artist to grow. Like, I don't think it's a one-hit wonder. I literally think it's like incremental steps to building a valuation and to build a career.
For sure. And that's one of the reasons why I reached out to have you on, because I think you guys are doing more than just trying to provide capital. So let's talk specifically of what that process looks like, how you find artists, how you onboard them, like, speak through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So we can, yeah.
Well, one of the things that we did do is we did put together a mastermind music team that had a lot of experience in the music industry, because I don't, which is actually kind of nice, because I get to learn everything fresh and I don't have any inherent biases of the past or any of that. So much of what we hear is that first. So when artists first come on, they can apply. Some cases we've created partnerships with different producers or different songwriters to really bring in artists. And so there's different ways to be able to come in. The other part of that is they all will meet through what we call an underwriting process. Someone within our team will talk through their strategy. Like, I want to make $10,000 or $100,000, or I want to grow this base. There's different strategies that we think are really important to build that. So that's kind of like the base level. The second level of this is I'm maybe from an old school genre where like festivals were really fun. And we used to like listen to live music, and you'd always have the opening band, and you'd have a few opening bands. And that's how you discovered new music at the like college bars. And I'm like, the thing that bothers me the most about the NFT space is it's not fun. I'm like, where's the listening parties? When are we like taking in the new music? When are we listening to the stories as to why I should buy into this NFT? The NFT in itself is just a tool. It's just a technical tool. Right. All of these other things are still so important. Now it makes it more fun and interesting to maybe do an NFT drop in the middle of a live show after you've performed a live song, and you take that recording and make it live. There's fun components that way. For us as well is when we work with a headline artist, for example, we ask the headline artist to acknowledge, give a kiss, give a blessing, giving a cosign to 3 emerging artists. Like this whole notion of it just being, oh, these live sort of like high level artists. Like we need to think about the community. And so having the emerging artists and mid-tier artists on a ticket. And then through that, we market, promote, and work with the strategies so that we can really support them, whether it's through the socials and the education. The other thing that's really important that I think for artists to understand is that they need to become the educator at first of their audience. They need to onboard their audience, because without education and onboarding the audience, they have no idea what you're trying to sell them. Like they really don't. And so we can't underestimate that enough. So we provide all of the materials, all of the socials, all of the education, the videos, so that artists can onboard their fan bases effectively. And I think that's the most important part of it, really.
Yeah, that is definitely a crucial element. And for the folks that have been successful, that has been a consistent component of their strategy, because, most people still don't know what an NFT is, what it stands for. There's probably like a 1% adoption rate, or super low. I mean, that's not an exact figure, I know that, but it's a super low
Really
adoption
is.
rate. So where are we at in terms of, has there been a headline artist? Have you guys dropped an NFT yet?
2 weeks.
In
Yes.
2 weeks?
Yes, in 2 weeks. So we will be starting with an all-female led lineup. I can already tell you Monifa is one of our amazing artists. I'm very excited about her. Ayana Irish. There's, for me, being one of the, I think I'm the only female-led music NFT platform, certainly in North America. I think there could be one or two in Europe. It's really important for me to be a voice of the diverse focus, and focusing on women, people from diverse backgrounds, I think is really important for me, because I've lived it, I'm living it. I think there's a lot of the platforms are very much the same sort of type of founder, which is fine. There's a certain audience there, but we want to do things differently. Like we really want to make sure that we're highlighting the why. I think the why is really important for Web3, that I think is lost in all the conversations, because we're talking about NFTs, but we're not talking about why would anybody just come to Web3, period. And the why is so fundamentally important, particularly for women and people of color, because Web3 was really fundamentally built to solve financial inequality. That's what it's for. You can put all this awesome fun on top of it, but that's what it's for. So the more that we collectively educate what's happening to everyday humans in a Web2 space that are working their asses off, we need to educate so that that's the population that's here, because the Web2 financial system was not built for women or people of color. It's inherently racist, it's inherently misogynist, and it's full of barriers. It just is. Everything from what's defining accredited investor to any sort of wealth generation and transfer. So we want to work with artists that want to carry that torch. And Monifa, she understands this at a primal level. Through her career, through her stance as a woman, as a Black woman, a woman that is also part of the LGBTQ community. Like those are the artists that we really want to get behind, because they fundamentally know what that's like, and we want to support those artists. So we have a more of a message and meaning behind what we're doing, even regardless of the NFT and the utilities that we provide. It's really about supporting the artists that want to highlight these injustices that have plagued not only the artist community, but just everyday humans.
Nice. No, I love it. Again, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to speak to you on the platform, because I think what you guys are doing is much more than just, financial gain. There's purpose, and there's passion behind what you guys are doing. So I'm not familiar with Monifa. I'm not sure if she's a huge artist now or a smaller artist. Is she?
You need to read about Monifa as one of our legends, like way back with Heavy D. Like
okay, we're going way like back in the day. Okay.
Like, and I spent, again, I don't want to speak for Monifa, but if you get a chance to spend some time, head over to her socials. This is a woman that has seen it and been in it and has pioneered. Like I spent like an hour with her, and I was overcome. Then the next hour I was overcome, and these are the types of stories of women that we want to get behind. And the stories, even with the, you know, the second week with some of the artists that we have lined up for our Super Bowl week, we do a theme week every week. So to celebrate and to also bring the love of listening and all kinds of music back again. So we have Super Hip Hop is our second week launch, and then we go into a complete urban Latin music takeover. So everything will be put into Spanish. We want to celebrate the music. And then the month of March is really Women in History and International Women's Day. So we want to again celebrate and elevate the voices of women in diverse populations worldwide. And so we're looking forward to the community also telling us what they want. And because as a platform, the cool part of the technology is it's flexible. You know, you can write into a smart contract whatever you want to write in, really. And so it allows us to tell these great stories. And I think it's the storytelling component of it that I'm so excited about.
Nice. So Monifa is a headlining artist. So she picked 3 emerging artists to support, kind of like on the same. I don't know what the correct terminology would be. Kind of like on the same ticket, the same lineup.
Yeah, we call it a ticket. Yeah, we call it a ticket or a lineup. Like it's sort of like the festival ticket. Yeah. So, and we'll be making more and more announcements of all the different artists to come. And really, like the mastermind team, they've worked with some incredible artists. So, you know, we've really had some cool meetings, and we can't wait to launch more and more of the projects. You know, some of them were just, you know, again, spacing in terms of time and also getting permission in some cases if they're attached to a label, like what is it that we can really do. So, you know, the thing that I've been the most passionate and advocate about is that the other part of every NFT, regardless, a portion of it has to give to the broader humanity. I don't care if it's books in, you know, in neighborhoods or instruments or music schools or food insecurity programs. It's a requirement to actually be on our platform. It's not a, oh, by the way, this NFT is doing that. It's actually a requirement for every artist that comes to our platform that a portion of that give back. The other part of it is the blockchain that we chose to build on, which is Celo. Celo doesn't get discussed a lot. We hear a lot about Ethereum and Solana and some of the others, but it is truly the only net negative carbon footprint. And so it does more. It actually reforests the planet. And it also contains within the coin and the chain itself a food insecurity program, which is near and dear to my heart because I was a kid who was hungry a lot. So I know what that feels like to wake up and to not have any food in a house and to go to school being hungry. And I think it's important that we as platforms, us as artists, really think about these bigger major things that we can do with something that's simple. It's just built into the technology. So why not? Why not make that a requirement? We're all chasing a bag. You know, that's the other thing that I've been sort of a vocal dissenter, maybe like you, like a skeptic about, because it's a lot chasing the bag. And that was not the intention of Web3 in its purity. It was not the intention. So, you know, I'm kind of a vocal proponent of us coming back to the real reason why Web3 is here and why we're all here really to support these artists. We don't, the notion of starving artists should end, you know, like we all live and breathe and their creativity is life-saving, life-giving, like it is life-saving. So we need to honor that part of it as well.
Yeah, no, so I'm with you. I just, you know, here's my thing. Being an artist is a very difficult thing to be because there's a lot of demand for being an artist, and you know the supply heavily outweighs the demand. I mean, there's a ridiculous amount of music being made, and there's just not that much time in the day to listen to all this music. So there are going to be some starving artists. I don't think we can get rid of that term.
No.
That there's 70,000 songs getting uploaded to Spotify every day. And what I'm doing is I'm looking into the future. Okay, when there is a 50% adoption rate, 40%, whatever that number is, what happens when all of these songs also turn into NFTs? Is there going to be somebody that pays for all of these. And we're seeing now that a lot of NFT drops are not being supported. There's a lot of NFTs that are going unsold for various reasons, but it's only going to get more and more cluttered, just like music is today.
Oh, for sure. And this is the irritants I have about the NFT space, to be frank, is that I always say not all NFTs are created equal and not all chains are created equal. So you need to know what's in it. No different than if you were to go to the grocery store and read the back of the label, it'd be like, oh, well, none of those words make sense. So I doubt that's food. Like that's not really real food. So you put it back on the shelf and you go until you find what it is that it is for you. And
Right.
I think that, again, in this psychology, my roots are psychology. So that's where I did my degree. The thing that's most interesting about it is, and I think this for everyone, and even for artists, is, taking this notion that not all NFTs are created equal. It's also like, what's in it for them? And this is why on our platform, we call this mutual exchange of gifts. So, it's a mutual exchange of gifts. I, the collector, have time and money that I'm willing to give to you. And you, the artist, has creativity of which you want to sell to me. That in its most basic premise. It's no different than a guy or a gal who's opening a corner store to sell food. I've got this food, you're buying this, mutual exchange of gifts. And in the most simplest way, it's like, what is the gift that you're giving? And can we provide a valuation on that? Then you apply like simple economic math. Will this be worth anything in the future? Like ultimately, you're right. 70,000 songs, I would argue less than a percentage will have any inherent value. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. There's value in the eye of the beholder, but there are the collector psychology, and then there is the I'm buying this because I'm building my own portfolio psychology. And I see that this song is going to be in a Pepsi commercial, or this song is going to be the next, James Bond theme. Those songs actually have quite a bit of value. And they have a lot of value, especially if you are a fractional owner of it. Right. And I think that the whole sad part of it right now is that like the basic economic math model has to apply in the NFT space, no different than in the old Web 2 space. You wouldn't buy something, if you take a purse, for example, I'll talk about purses, and you take a purse that is like a real versus a knockoff. Well, I could sell knockoffs all day long, or I want to own the original one. That's really up to you, which is of value to you. But the resale value, does the knockoff have a resale value proportionate to the real one? And that's how NFTs really should be valued.
And and that's why I think only time will tell. When we get to the reseller market or the secondary market, does it even exist for most of these songs? So I think things are going to get very interesting when people go through EQ. Maybe you guys structure them differently when you plan to do these drops, but is there streaming royalties attached? Is it just the NFT? Is it one of ones? Are you doing several? How are the drops structured?
Great question. So when an artist comes to us, they automatically put in their Spotify ID, and that allows us to pull down all of their data instantly. So we know all of their social data, all of their data across DSPs in real time. And when they do that, that allows us to coach and guide what is the right strategy for whatever asset. So I always say to artists, like, open up your bucket and like look at all these things that you have in it. And each one of them are individual assets. And some of them have value, and some of them have value to you. Some of them just have value to your mom. And that's all good. Like that doesn't matter. Then there are some that you're like, maybe there is some kind of a long-term value that can be generated on this song or on this, or it is a little bit of a luck, right? Sometimes it's just pure luck. Like someone hears the song and it all of a sudden explodes, because we've all heard crap music and wonder how that ever exploded to like amazing music that no one knows about. So there is the bit of the wonder in all of that. So when an artist comes to us, we try to work with them and say, okay, let's apply some some knowledge and understanding. As our artist dashboard grows out, this will be the back end tool for an artist to get educated, to plan strategies, to look for collaborations and community. I cannot wait for the artist dashboard to launch, which is March 1st, because
Nice.
it will have all of these things that will help an artist plan a career. The other part of it too is then as these grow, these values that have secondary market, they then have the ability as a bundle to also grow in value. So a grouping of our artists versus or NFTs versus one by itself, which I think goes to like the basic fundamental principles of like real estate buying and what becomes like how you buy so many doors and then how you can bundle that together to create value. So there is lots of, I would say, wealth generating strategies that I believe that artists really need to learn. Like they really need to learn.
So there's not like, hey, this is it, because I know like on, not to talk about other platforms, but that
Yes,
sound,
okay, far away.
the Sound XYZ platform, I think they did 25 drops and they were all kind of structured the same way. They all had like, I think 25 of each NFT that dropped, something like that, 20 or 25. So with your platform, you work with the artist to figure out which structure makes the most sense.
Yes. And it could be a one of one. It could be 100 of one. It could be starting at a price of $10. The one thing that we do think is we believe that NFTs naturally have a higher value if there's cash. Cash is kind of king in that regard. So we do say to the artists, you need to give a financial reward to your fan bases of a certain amount, 5% of the royalties for 5 years. We then guide the artist to decide, and they're in control of it and they plan for it. But I think that causes a more natural inclination to want to buy NFTs because there's a value attached to it. No difference of you owning a Costco card and getting paid for your Costco grocery shopping, right? Like you get a money back, right? So there's a rebate and there's money back to that. Now, in some cases, you could also say it's just all the revenue that this song may generate, period. Doesn't necessarily have to just be the royalty streams. You could say if this song goes to the moon, I'll share 5% of the revenues from this song.
Mm-hmm.
And
Nice.
then what if that song ended up on a movie and a licensing deal or the theme of a TV show? So then that NFT has a lot of value.
Right. So, and that, again, this is me kind of being in the independent space for some time, and that sounds amazing. I wonder how that it gets executed, or how NFT holders even know, like, okay, if we
Great
tie
question.
the payouts, the future payouts of this NFT to things that, like a placement or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
how would the NFT holder even know? It would
Great
it be
question.
up to the
So
artist to?
yes, great question. So when the artist signs on with EQ, they sign on an agreement with us, of
Mhm.
which we will be able to pull that revenue and then pay out the token holders that have bought that on the smart contract. So we facilitate that and support that for the artist. Because we know that artists shouldn't be expected to go, oh, did I pay out those people? Like not because by virtue of just being busy, right? So we're able to collect that on behalf of that for the token holders. The other part of it is that in the collectors are going to have their dashboard space, just like the artists have their dashboard space. So we want to treat them again, this mutual exchange of gifts. So it allows us to communicate with the collectors. It allows them to create their accounts. It allows them to see what's happening so that if a song, quote unquote, got licensed like that, and it ends up in a movie and you hold the token holder, it's not that hard to verify for us on that side of it that this is what's transpired. So
Right.
we do rely a tiny bit on the honor system with artists to really respect their fan bases, because
Right.
it's not like as a platform we're nascent. We're facilitating, again, we facilitate the mutual gifts. That's our whole mantra. Like you
Right.
have this, you have this, let's facilitate that so that there is the ability to do it.
Did you follow the rapper Nas? Did you his recent drop?
Mhm.
Did you follow that? Because we talked
I
about
did.
it on the podcast this past week, and it was very, like, if you know music, then you're gonna have questions with answers that are not readily available on the website, right? Because it says, you're entitled to a small percentage of the streaming royalties. So, if you're in music, that, the streaming royalties kind of come in two parts, right? There's streaming royalties that come from the publishing, and there's streaming royalties that come from the master side. So a consumer is not going to know. They're just going to be like, oh, I get future royalties. They're not going to ask those questions on what royalties are we really talking about. So they can't really value the investment. They might just be excited. They might just be a Nas fan. And if that's all they want, then, to just support the artist, that's fine. But if you're looking at the economics or the investment value of what you're buying into, and then Erin, our other partner in the MEC, actually, I think she's in the chat. She also brought up, well, when do we start getting these royalties? Because these songs have been out for a little while now. Are we backdating from when the song was dropped, or is it from when the NFT is dropped going forward? But again, these aren't questions that normal consumers would ask to be able to properly value what they might be investing in. So
great question and great comment. And I agree. So we did follow for the most part. And again, I'm not a fan, so I apologize if this sounds hideous. I thought it was pretty steep. Like some of them, I was like, "Whoa, that was a lot of money." Like I felt it was directed to a specific client, a very specific customer base that really I don't think is the whole point of this space. And you're right with regards to there not being the transparency. So when someone's looking at the deal, what we call the deal memo on our end, that should be very clear. That's why if it's going to be called a royalty or just revenue, simplifies things. We're on EQ, we're always like, how do we simplify it? Like, this is too complicated. There's too many nuances. In the case of that, as soon as you sell the NFT, with regards to a royalty payment, it should be effective from the date that the purchase happened and then what's going forward. And then it does need to clearly articulate it includes royalties of X, Y, and Z, or you could just do a full-on catch-all of revenue, which I think is a better way to do it, because it's literally saying, if this song generates money, I get paid. Like, that's a simple way to draw it. But they're playing a few games there that I'm not a fan of. And I think that they count on again, a certain amount of people not understanding it, not Nas or Nas himself, just certain platforms. Right. There's a lot of platforms that have popped up in the space. Now, I've been in the tech industry for 12 years. There's a lot of actors in this space, right, and not all of them are created equally. The other part of it is what bothers me when it's not transparent for the artists, if they try to leave or they want their information back, or the commissions or the take rates of these platforms once they've minted something. I don't think there's enough discussion on really being open and transparent around the take rates of the platforms, which, again, I'm a vocal advocate that the platforms should facilitate the transaction. And anytime you are going further into that profitability, you're going into the territory of doing the same thing that's already been done to the artist. That's again not the point. So I think that in many cases, it's again how you structure the assets. I think it was cool, parts of what his offerings were, that there were different tiers. And I think that they thought through like what the different tiers of the artist should be. But I think at all times, if it's not an artist asking or collectors asking, is like, these platforms are meant to be 150 million% transparent. That's the idea of Web3. It's open source. It should be clear. If it's not clear, do a timeout. Like, if you're not sure what you're buying, do a timeout and say, okay, I'm not clear about what this is. And it's the same thing when I say that not all NFTs are created equal, and not all chains, the blockchains, are not created equal. And so those are the questions we need to start asking.
But I think it's more of a situation. I mean, yes, it's not clear. I mean, and that was a problem. I mean, that's been a problem in the music industry, right? Like contracts not being clear, like just the lack of transparency in general. But now it's just shifting over to the NFT space because it's not clear, but people don't know. It's not like, you don't even know the questions to ask, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and unless you came from music, unless you understand publishing, you're not even gonna know how, like, what questions to ask. Like, that's gonna be a huge problem.
So can I just say like two things that I say to every artist and to collectors? Collectors should ask, first of all, will this NFT ever make money by something else regardless from me? Like that's the number one thing you should be asking. Like, does it contain an ability to go to the moon on its own, from its own volition, with its own breath? Like it should have its own skyrocket ability. If there's a hesitation, then the value now is shifted to the eye of your beholder. Then you are a collector. So
but I'm sorry, but like, how would no? I mean, even being in the music industry for some time, I mean, I think I would have, I would have a better understanding of like, where I think a song's potential is. But like a general fan is not gonna, they're not gonna know where to start to do that analysis.
Okay, let me do the better things. Does it have any replicatability? Meaning, does it live outside of the listening platform that you're listening to? So does it live in YouTube? Does it live in Twitch? Does it live in gaming? Does it live on the Netflix TV shows that you watch? Every time you hear a piece of music, that was licensed and paid for. So the thing about it is to take all of your listening and your daily habits where music shows up, someone paid cash for it.
Right.
Somewhere along that line, someone paid cash for it. That's called replicatability. That's the ability for the song to have its own life form.
And this is why I believe, and this only cements what I'm already thinking, because all of that replicability is success in the Web 2 world. So you need to be able to still do the things that we've always been saying that you need to do in order for it to transfer.
100%. And that's the thing for us is like some platforms preclude the song from living on all the platforms where we all live. And we're like, no. Like we can draw this smart contract here, but this song you still need to do the hustle. You're still going to need to put it there. Now, this is where it's better. Before you've launched anything, I see the Web3 space as a great launch pad. I don't know what's going to happen with this song. I feel it's really special. I think it's got some of this potential and this ability. I'm going to launch it here first. You attach a token to it. And now you have passionate people that are buying into your aspiration and your dream. And then they will go and get it on playlists and listening and, putting every contest in. It's like, oh, director X, Y, and Z, you need to have this song in your TV show because now you're passionate and now you're connected to it. And that has a greater value. The final thing I'll say about artists, the question that artists needs to be asking, the artist needs to ask is, what is the platform's take rate? That's number one. How much does the platform take from this? Forget about the fans and what you're paying out. How much does that platform? And does the platform prevent you from doing anything that you want to do? And if any part of you says, yeah, it is preventing me. Oh, I can only do it here. And now it's only stuck here. Then the platform is skewing the other way and it's an old system.
And your guys' take rate, if I remember correctly, is 3%, right?
Yeah. And to be honest, it's always just 3%. And the thing about it, in full transparency, I chose it for the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I figure anything outside of that, and I'm tapping into waters I shouldn't be. And so I figure I'm good with 3%. And so I take 3% on the initial sale. I take 3% of a secondary sale. And I take 3% if I facilitate any royalty payments. That is it.
Okay.
I don't believe we should be in the pocket of artists where everyone else is.
Right. Erin had a question that I believe we touched on a bit, but she said, and this is going back to when we were talking about getting like a sync placement. She said, how do you verify and pay out royalties? And you said it's kind of a little bit on the honor system to some extent, right?
To some extent. And then if they have a distribution partner that they've already partnered with, we can either do a takedown or we just get attached to the song. So EQ would be one of the people that gets paid on the split of the 3% or the amount that you've offered to the token holders. And then we pay them out on your behalf.
Got you. Is there anything, I mean, again, something else that just concerns me is like anytime something gets really hot and that's the buzzword, if you hop on Twitter, there's 50 million Twitter spaces talking about NFTs, this, NFT. So anytime there's this amount of hoopla over something, people are trying to come in the game system. They're trying to steal from you, things like that. Are there some things that, that you can relay to artists of like what to look out for, potential scams that are already revealing themselves in the space that you've seen?
Yeah, some of the scans that I've seen already is like where it prevents the song from moving through Web 2 world. Like there's no reason in the world with an NFT smart contract that song can't live anywhere where it needs to live. So that's number one. Like, is it still mine? Do I still take it? Or does this platform put on any constraints of where it can be listened to? Because let's say that it says, oh, it can only be listened to here. All that's telling you is that the platform wants your eyeballs. They want the traffic, they're paying on the traffic, they're going to monopolize on the traffic, they want your data, their information. That's a Web 2 system. So that's like the most obvious one. The second one is every artist needs to ask what the platform is making. Like that's the most simple question, is be like, what do you make off of everything that I put here? Because again, if they're taking too much, it may seem all great, but then you go to look at your bill statement, it's no different than the label system. They've now charged you for marketing. They've now charged you for more things. So if it's not clear or transparent for any artist, you just need to take a time out. Like you just need to back away. You will not miss this boat. That's the one thing that I say about that too.
In your opinion, what would you say would be too much?
Anything above 3%.
Got it. Okay. Cool. And I cut you off.
If you do the math, you shouldn't have to be like, you need a lot of volume. You know, we've worked our financials. It doesn't make us the most profitable. It makes us the most fair, the most transparent, and the most artist friendly, but it still makes us a valuable company. And so the difference is, again, is the notion of Web3 is about collaboration. It's about community. It's about community ownership. It has all of the pieces of that puzzle. If the artist has to give up more just to post it there, and if your collectors have to pay these enormous gas fees, which are not going away, by the way, and you know, those are some of the main issues. If you're on certain platforms, some of the other ones are net zero, but there's still other things that the chains can do that go back to the fundamental question of why. So this is the most important thing for artists and collectors. When you go to any of these spaces, ask yourself if this feels like this is solving financial inclusion. And if any part of you goes, no, this platform's just taking, this just making, they're just trying to get our money, then you know, trust that. Just trust that. You don't have to know all of the details of that, but just trust your intuition on that. They're taking more than they need to.
Right. There was another question a little earlier. I'll put it up on the screen. She said, what are ways, elements that can be incorporated into NFTs to create resale value?
That's an amazing question. So I think there's really like maybe three parts of an NFT. One is the immediate attraction of immediate revenue, right? So if it can make some immediate money to you, a royalty, that's one part of the equation. The second part of it is that over time, if this was part of an overall very, I would say, valuable catalog, let's say, like I know David Bowie just sold his catalog. And you found David Bowie 20 years before David Bowie, and David Bowie's catalog was going to be sold, but you own his NFT. You actually can rise in tide in value like his music catalog does, because now you already own the NFT asset. And so whoever's buying that catalog is going to value those NFTs. So that's the second long-term value. The third is in this area of what I would say is in the collector mindset, you know, having the rookie card. The rookie card of Babe Ruth, those what we would say the utility. Some of them will have value, and some of them will have enormous value if they're put correctly. But there's really two sides of the equation most important: your immediate cash flow value, and over time, does this asset have this long-term value of which you own a potential ownership in it? And then the final thing on that is that, let's say if you think about this like Monopoly, and let's say you had David Bowie and Sting, and I'm dating myself, aren't I, with all of my choices of Monopoly. But imagine like a Monopoly board. And you remember the blue squares where it was like they were the cheaper properties to buy, and people were trying to buy Park Place, and the more you stopped on them, but you always tried to get the whole group of them. Kind of think about some of your NFT purchases like that too. You know, is it important to just own Park Place, or is it important to own the 3 blocks? And so those are some of the like really fundamental core strategies of wealth building for you. So as an artist, build your own monopoly board. Some aren't going to have as much value and some are going to be penthouses.
Yeah. So like we said, in order to create some resale value for your NFTs, is you have to get more popularity as an artist. Your stuff has to do well in outside of the metaverse as well, in real life.
I would caveat to that, it doesn't have to be on every playlist with so many streams. That doesn't necessarily also guarantee that the asset has value. It's also thinking about where this song can be used outside of streaming. Streaming is a passive listening income stream. It's passive listening. It's just passive. So where can this be active?
But it goes back to what Aaron brought up, and my concern too. It's like we don't even currently have a system where every royalty or every income stream just comes into one system, right? Like we are getting money from different places, depending on is it coming from publishing, is it coming from the master side, so that part needs to be fixed first in order for this to work as smoothly as it might in theory.
Yeah. And that's where I'm really excited about our artist dashboard, because I keep saying, like, what other API integrations to like streamline their money, streamline their payments, streamline their revenue, streamline their NFTs. Like I was stunned, going into it over the last, year and a half, learning about it all, how hyper segmented the industry really is.
Yeah. So I mean, I believe in the utility of NFTs, and I think you're going to people are going to be able to create some really cool experiences for their fans. But I think people that are just coming in it from maybe an investment standpoint are going to lose a lot or they're going to realize how bad of an investment most music really is. Like
it depends, I think. Yeah. Like I think again, like the different psychology is a collector and investor, but then also a tastemaker. What I'm excited about the NFT side of it is I think that it really brings back discovery of music too, right? Like imagine if you were listening and you bought it and it validated like that sort of taste making, and then you hold on to it over time, right? It's like you really discovered it. I have teenage girls and I don't even know who half these artists are. They are the most obscure, and they pride themselves on finding obscure. They pride themselves on it. So I think even the listener is different than what used to be just sort of mainstream music is now really finding your taste. And that's why I think the NFTs are exciting that way, because I think it does validate some of the discovery.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I love what you guys are doing. I love that it's beyond just trying to raise capital, the collaboration, the community, the environment aspect of it. So I really appreciate your guys' efforts. If we can be if we can be a resource going, or if we can help in any way going forward, please never hesitate to reach out. Is there anything else that we should end with?
I would love if you're an artist, please head to EQ Exchange and apply. What is
the website? What is
EQ.exchange. If you are an artist or a collector, please, if you're a collector, please apply for early access. You will be looking at the deals before everyone else. If you are an artist, please head to EQ.exchange and apply. Please head over to my Twitter at justbejanice and hit me up if you want to chat further. Our team at EQ Exchange, both on Twitter and Instagram and also TikTok, they're super active. We're here to work with you and to listen to your ideas as well. We're very open to learning with you, and head to our Discord and connect with us that way. But if you are an artist or have artists in your world or know of any artists, please send them to us, because we're going to be doing some really cool pre-investments, live listening parties, festivals, tying to live venues. Nice. We want to tie into your world as you are building your world. We shouldn't be expecting you to change habits all the way over here. It is a tool that should run parallel to the things that you're doing. And can we amplify them? You know, if you did an NFT drop in the middle of a bar, you know, when you're singing, that's cool. Can we do that for you? Like, we're looking for those kinds of strategies and opportunities to really be part of the artist journey. So we're all ears. And you're looking at the person who makes the decisions. So like at the end of the day, like you don't have to, like, I don't have to ask anybody. I'm here. We're open and we're here to support artists for sure.
Nice, nice, dope. So I put the website in the comment section. If you don't see it, it's eq.exchange. Check it out, have the conversation. Just know that, you know, NFTs are not just a cash grab. It's about building community. It's about collaborating. It's much more than that. I mean, sure, there might be some people that got in early and got some money, and there might even still be some opportunities to just get some money and, you know, but that's not the long-term play. I mean, yes, you want to be financially successful, but it's much more than that. So
yes, it's part of your overall strategy. It's one of your portfolio areas that can drive value. So we're happy to be a voice for that for you.
Indeed. Well, Janice, thank you very much. I enjoyed the conversation. I hope we have more in the future. And maybe you can come back later in the year and kind of give us an update on everything that's going on. So
thank you for having me. I so appreciate this. Bye, everyone.
My pleasure. Thursday, you guys, DJ Payne will be on. I'm not sure who his guest is, but I think my guest Monday is DJ Z from DJ Booth Audio Mac. So we're gonna have another dope discussion next Monday. Have a great start to your week, secure some wins, and I will talk to you guys soon. Peace.
Bye.